In this section of this course, you will learn about asynchronous programming and AJAX in JavaScript. Now, before we talk about asynchronous programming, it is very important to understand what synchronous programming is. So, in this lecture, we are going to learn about synchronous and asynchronous programming and the difference between them. Now, in the very beginning of this course, we learned that JavaScript is a single-threaded programming language. That means there is only one thread which executes all the JavaScript code. And because of this, JavaScript engine can process only one statement at a time. Okay, so when we run a JavaScript program, a single thread is assigned for executing all the code in that JavaScript program. And a thread can execute only one statement at a time. So if your JavaScript program has 1,000 lines of code, then each line of code will be executed in the JavaScript thread, and they will be executed line by line. Let's understand this with an example. So consider this as a JavaScript program, and this JavaScript program has 9 statements, and this is the JavaScript thread. And here we will see the output when a statement will be executed. Okay, so when the execution of this JavaScript program will start, this statement 1 will be pushed in this thread where it will be executed. And once it is executed, the result will be returned and the execution of this statement 1 is complete. And once the execution of the first statement, that is statement 1, is complete, again this JavaScript thread is empty. So next statement, which is this statement 2, will be pushed in this JavaScript thread where it will be executed and return the result. And once the execution of this statement 2 is complete, then the next statement will be pushed where it will be executed and return the result. So in this way, all these statements of this JavaScript program will be executed in this thread, and they will be executed one by one. Okay, so since JavaScript is a single threaded programming language, the code which we write in the JavaScript program gets executed line by line in the order of their execution. And this is what asynchronous programming is. Now, there are many other programming languages like C++ and Java which supports multi-threading. That means we can write a program in such programming languages in such a way that we can execute a code in multiple threads. That means we can execute several codes simultaneously. For example, here, let's say it's a C++ or Java program. Now we can write this C++ or Java program in such a way that it can execute in multiple threads. And since these programming languages supports multiple threadings, multiple statements can be executed at a time. But this is not possible in JavaScript because JavaScript only gets one thread. And in that thread, all the statements are executed line by line. Okay, so in a synchronous program, code is executed line by line in the order in which they are called. That means in the order of their execution. And because of this, if any part of your code is taking long time in its execution, let's say due to long running operations such as network access, then the next statement will have to wait for its execution to complete. Okay, so a statement will only get executed when the execution of its previous statement is complete. And most of the code which we write in JavaScript is synchronous code. Let's see a simple example of synchronous program. So here we have this JavaScript program, and this program is synchronous. Okay, so here we are creating two functions, this hello world function and this greetings function, and then we are calling this greetings function. Now consider this box as browser's developer console. So when we run this program in the browser, first of all this greetings function will be called, and the control will reach to the definition of this greetings function. Inside this greetings function, when the body of this greetings function will be executed, first we have this console.log statement. So when this console.log statement will be executed, it will log good morning in the developer console. and this statement will be executed in JavaScript thread. Once the execution of this statement is complete, again the thread is now empty. So the next statement will be pushed in the JavaScript thread where it will be executed. Now here we are calling this hello world function. So now the control will reach to the definition of this hello world function, and inside this hello world function we have this console.log statement. So this console.log statement will be pushed in the JavaScript thread where it will be executed, and it will log hello world in the developer console. And now the execution of this hello world function is complete. So now we are back to the greetings function from where we called this hello world function. And since the execution of this hello world function is now complete, the next statement can be executed. So this statement will again be pushed to JavaScript thread where it will be executed, and it will log have a good day. And then the execution of this greetings function is also complete. So the control will reach back from where we call this greetings function. So as you would have noticed here, in a synchronous program, the code is executed line by line in the order in which they are called. No two statements have been executed simultaneously. And this is what asynchronous programming is. Let's write this same program in the code editor and run it in the browser and see if we get the result in this same order. So here we have the same program which you saw in the slide. Now, if I save the changes, you will notice that first good morning is logged, then hello world, then have a good day. So the output is same as we saw in the slide. So when this greetings function will be called, first this statement will be executed, it will log good morning, and then this hello world function will be called. And inside this hello world function, again we are logging this message hello world in the developer console. So in the second output, you will see hello world logged in the developer console. And then the execution of this hello world function is complete. So the statement after the call to this hello world function will get executed. That means this console.log statement, and it will log have a good day. Okay, so here the statements have been executed line by line in the order in which they have been called. Now let's take another example of this synchronous program. So again here we have a very simple JavaScript program, and again consider this box as browser's developer console. So when we run this program, first of all, this statement will be executed and a variable will be created and assigned with the value good morning. And once the execution of this statement is complete, then the next statement, which is this console.log statement, will be executed, and it will log the value of this str variable in the developer console. Then this alert function will be executed. And when this alert function will be executed, an alert window will appear in the browser. Now, an alert window is a model window, and we have learned that a model window makes a web page unresponsive. That means the execution of an alert function is not complete as long as the alert window is visible in the browser. The execution of the alert function is only complete when we close the alert window. Okay, so as long as this alert window is visible in the browser, the execution of this alert function is still in progress. Okay, the execution of this alert function will only complete when we close this alert window. Now, because of this, since the execution of this alert function is still in progress, the next statement after this alert function will have to wait for its execution. That means here the execution of this alert function is blocking the execution of this console.log statement. And that's why we say that synchronous programs are blocking. They block the execution of next line of code if its own execution is not complete yet. Now, let's say the user has clicked on this OK button. So when the user will click on this OK button, this alert window will disappear. And when this alert window disappears, the execution of this alert function will complete and the next statement will be executed. And here the next statement is this console.log statement, to which we have passed this message, have a good day. So this message will be logged in the developer console. Okay, so this is another example of a synchronous program. And here we saw that in asynchronous program, the code is blocking. Let's write this program in the code editor and see the output. So here we have the same program which you saw in this slide. Now let me save the changes, and you will see that first this statement was executed and this str variable was created. Then the value of this str variable was logged in the developer console, as you can see here. Okay, so good morning has been logged here. Then the execution of this alert function started and it displayed this alert window in the browser. Now this alert function is still executing because this alert window is still visible in the browser. The execution of this alert function will only complete when we click on this OK button and this alert window disappears from the browser. As long as it is visible in the browser, the execution of this alert function is in progress. It has not completed. And because of this, the next console.log statement has not been executed yet. And that's why we don't see this message logged in the developer console. Okay, this message will be logged in the developer console only when this console.log statement will be executed. And this console.log statement will be executed only after the execution of this alert function is complete. So here you can see the execution of this alert function is blocking the execution of next statement. Now when I click on this OK button and when this alert window disappears, you will notice that immediately this console.log statement got executed and it logged "Have a good day" in the developer console. So this is how a synchronous program works. In a synchronous program, the code is executed line by line in the order of its execution. And if a code is taking long time in its execution, then the next statement will have to wait for its execution. Okay, so a synchronous program is blocking. So now that we know what is a synchronous program, let's now talk about asynchronous program. In an asynchronous program, we can execute a piece of code asynchronously in the background. That means in an asynchronous program, we can execute several statements at a time. And because of this, an asynchronous code does not block the execution of next line of code. Now, you might ask, when JavaScript is a single-threaded programming language and only one statement can be executed in a thread, then how can we execute several statements at a time? Well, there are many functions and APIs which is provided by the Web API, and they get executed asynchronously in the background. Okay, so the functions and APIs provided by browser's Web API gets executed in the background. They does not get executed in the JavaScript thread. And because of this, we can run several statements simultaneously in JavaScript. So one statement will execute in the background and another statement will execute in the JavaScript thread. Okay, now one such function is setTimeout function, which runs asynchronously. So let's use this setTimeout function in our program and let's see how an asynchronous code executes. Before that, remember that the asynchronous code is non-blocking and it does not stop the execution of main code. So here we have a very simple JavaScript program, and this program is very similar to the one which we saw for synchronous program. The only difference here is that we are using a setTimeout function here. And inside this setTimeout function, we have specified this callback function. And inside this callback function, we are calling this alert function. Okay, now let's see how this program will be executed. So first of all, this variable will be created and it will be assigned with the value good morning. And it will be executed synchronously. That means this line of code will execute in JavaScript thread. Once the execution of this line of code is complete, the next statement will be executed. And this line of code is also synchronous. So it will also get executed in the JavaScript thread. And it will log good morning in the developer console. And once the execution of this console.log statement is complete, here we have this setTimeout function. Now setTimeout function executes asynchronously. That means this setTimeout function will not get executed in the JavaScript thread. Instead, this setTimeout function will be handed over to the background where it will do its job. Now, what is the job of the setTimeout function? The job of the setTimeout function is to wait for provided time interval. That means in this case, the setTimeout function will wait for 5000 milliseconds. And since the setTimeout function is executing in the background, the JavaScript thread is empty. So it will not block the execution of next line of code, because since the thread is empty, the next statement can be executed in that thread. Okay. Now to this setTimeout function, we have specified this callback function. So this callback function will get registered in the background and it will wait there. Meanwhile, the next statement, which is this console.log statement, it will be pushed to the JavaScript thread where it will get executed and it will log have a good day. Okay, so as you would have noticed here that the execution of this setTimeout function didn't block the execution of next line of code. This setTimeout function is doing its job in the background. That means it is waiting for 5000 milliseconds in the background. It has not blocked the execution of next line of code for 5000 milliseconds. Now let's say the time interval of 5000 milliseconds is complete. So the job of this setTimeout function is complete and the timer will be removed from the background. And once the time interval is complete, this callback function will get executed. And inside this callback function, we are calling this alert function. So an alert window will appear in the browser. All right. So this is how an asynchronous program works. It does not block the execution of further line of code. Let's see this example in code editor. So here we have the same program which you saw in the slide. Now let me save the changes and run this program. So here you can see this message good morning and this message have a good day has been logged. And after 5 seconds, this alert window appears. Okay, so this setTimeout function didn't block the execution of this line of code. First, good morning was logged from this console.log statement. Then this setTimeout function was called and it was executing in the background. And since it was executing in the background, it didn't block the execution of next line of code. And that's why this console.log statement got executed immediately and it logged have a good day. And after 5000 milliseconds, when the job of this setTimeout function is complete, the callback function attached to this setTimeout function got executed and it displayed this alert window in the browser. Okay, let me reload this page again to show you the output. So you can see good morning and have a good day has been logged, and after 5 seconds, that means after 5000 milliseconds, this alert window appears. So an asynchronous program is non-blocking. All right. Now remember that not all the code in JavaScript are asynchronous. Only the functions and APIs provided by the web API, they can run asynchronously. Not all the code of a JavaScript program can run asynchronously. Now the next question is what this background actually is. So in one of the lectures of this course, we learned about JavaScript runtime environment for the browser. And we learned that for the runtime environment of the browser, we have something called as Web API. And this Web API provides several useful methods and APIs which we can use in our JavaScript program, like timer functions, for example, set timeout and set interval, DOM methods like get element by ID, query selector, etc., this fetch API, and many other APIs. So all these methods and APIs, they run asynchronously. They get executed asynchronously. Okay, and where are they executed? They are executed in the background. But what is that background? That background is nothing but this web API. Okay, so for example, when we call the setTimeout function, that setTimeout function gets handed over to this web API where it does its job. Okay, the setTimeout function does not get executed in the JavaScript thread. It gets executed in the web API. And same is true for DOM methods and properties, fetch API, and other APIs. So all the methods and APIs which is provided by this web API, they get executed or they do their job here in this web API and they run asynchronously. And if you remember, These methods and APIs are not actually a part of JavaScript language. They are simply provided by this web API. So this is a high-level overview of what synchronous and asynchronous programming is. If you have any question, feel free to ask it. Thank you for listening. Have a great day.